At the time of the Exodus, who was the Pharaoh? In order to provide my viewpoint, I will be relying on the following 4 primary assumptions. 1. The various interpretations of 1 Kings 6 verse 1 support the dates 480 to 440 years prior to Solomon, a time period of approximately 1450 to 1400 BC. 2. A standard deviation of approximately 5 to 50 years in the dates of traditional Egyptian chronology. 3. The fact that the Exodus resulted in Egypt's inability to exercise economic and military control of the Levant. And 4. The fact that the Habiru of the Amarna letters refer, at least in part, to the Israelite conquest during the reign of Akhenaten. However, before we get any further, it is necessary for us to consider yet another significant premise, which is that the body of the Pharaoh was lost in the Yam Suf, also known as the Red Sea. In light of the fact that this is a topic that is frequently debated in the context of seeking to determine who the Pharaoh of the Exodus was, I felt it necessary to take a moment to address it. I am of the opinion that the tale of the Exodus has sufficient evidence to support the idea that Pharaoh and his army were drowned in the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, as well as the entire army of Pharaoh, which had gone into the sea after them. Not a single one of them remained. 28th verse of Exodus. The Egyptian norm would have been for the Pharaoh to personally lead his forces, and because of this I believe it is reasonable to understand the reference to all of the Pharaoh's army having perished to include him as well. The fact that this is the case leads many people to conclude that the body of the Pharaoh would have been lost forever. Exodus 14:30, on the other hand, claims that Israel witnessed the Egyptians as they were lying dead on the shore. The question that would be raised as a result of this is whether or not the body of the Pharaoh would have been among those that washed up on the coast. In any case, I am unable to provide a firm response. Exodus 14 has a sufficient amount of uncertainty for us to at least explore the idea that the body of the Pharaoh may have been retrieved as one that washed up on the coast. Therefore, the argument that, since we have the body of the Pharaoh, he can't be the Pharaoh of the Exodus, which is a typical criticism, could not necessarily be correct. Therefore, in the process of presenting this video, I will make an effort to be open to either of the 2 possibilities. Either the body of the Pharaoh was found after his death, or it was lost in the ocean beyond all hope of retrieval. Taking all of this into consideration, let's start narrowing down our search. A number of different interpretations of 1 Kings 6:1 point to a chronological range of roughly 1450 to 1400 BC for the events that took place during the Exodus. In light of the fact that 480 and 440 are both round figures, it is possible that this time period might be extended to about 1460–1390 BC. Thutmose III, Amenhotep II, and Thutmose IV are the 3 pharaohs that come to mind when we search through the standard chronologies of Egyptian history. These pharaohs reigned in or around the times that are being discussed. The pharaohs Hatshepsut and Amenhotep III serve as bookends for this group of rulers. The fact that the biblical text always refers to Pharaoh as a male enables us to immediately eliminate Hatshepsut from consideration. Hatshepsut, on the other hand, was a female pharaoh. The following is a list of the dates that are currently set for the remaining possible pharaohs. The reigns of Thutmose III, Amenhotep II, Thutmose IV, and Amenhotep III span the years as follows: 1458 to 1425 BC, 1427 to 1397 BC, 1397 to 1388 BC, and 1388 to 1351 BC. According to these dates, Thutmose III is the most likely choice for the meaning of the phrase 480 years that appears in the Masoretic reading of 1 Kings. This interpretation suggests that Amenhotep II might be considered a feasible option due to the possible range of standard deviations in chronological order. Amenhotep II, on the other hand, is the most credible choice for the 440 years that are mentioned in the Septuagint's description. Even by traditional dates, Thutmose IV is a feasible option at this time, and the standard deviation from chronological order only serves to bolster his case. Despite the fact that Amenhotep III is an anomaly according to conventional dates, it is possible that chronological departure might be regarded a second choice. Let's take a look at the condition of Egypt throughout each of the pharaohs' reigns to see if there is any indication of economic and military weakness. Now that we have established the possibility that each pharaoh was the same Exodus pharaoh, let's look at the state of Egypt during each of their reigns. We are able to almost instantly rule out Thutmose III as the pharaoh of the Exodus. despite the fact that a precise interpretation of the phrase 480 years that appears in the Masoretic reading of 1 Kings 6:1 occurs during the reign of Thutmose III. One of the reasons for this is because Thutmose III is often considered to be the most powerful pharaoh in the whole history of ancient Egypt. It is not the case that Egypt is showing signs of weakening during his reign. Rather, Egypt is at the pinnacle of its imperial strength and influence. It is possible that Egypt would not have been as powerful and prosperous as it was if the Exodus had taken place under his reign. This is due to the fact that the high chronology of Egypt has traditionally put Amenhotep II on the throne around the year 1446 BC, which is the date that is supported by a precise interpretation of 1 Kings 6:1 in the Masoretic. Historically, Amenhotep II has been a favored option for those who advocate for an early date of the Exodus. Even within the framework of the present chronology, he is in possession of the backing of the precise interpretation of the Septuagint's teachings, because he shared the throne with his father, Thutmose III. During the first 2 years of his reign, it is much more difficult to believe that Thutmose III was the pharaoh who oversaw the Exodus. When Amenhotep II passed away, it is noteworthy to note that his successor, Thutmose IV, did not appear to have been in line for the throne. This is something that should be taken into consideration. Specifically, the dream stele that was constructed between the paws of the Great Sphinx of Giza is evidence of this truth. In Exodus 12:29, it is said that Amenhotep II lost his firstborn son. Proponents of Amenhotep II as the pharaoh of the Exodus cite to this as evidence that Amenhotep II suffered this loss. However, when we investigate the situation of Egypt after his rule, we see that Egypt's strength and influence have not lessened. This assertion is supported by the contract that Thutmose IV negotiated with Artatama I, the king of the Mitanni, in order to create a boundary between Egypt and the Mitanni country. In the event that the Exodus took place toward the conclusion of Amenhotep II's reign, it is highly improbable that Egypt would have been either economically or militarily powerful enough to have been able to negotiate those terms. My opinion is that Amenhotep II is not the pharaoh of the Exodus because of this reason, despite the fact that some people find him to be popular. Because of the pact that was discussed before with the Mitanni, the reign of Thutmose IV is regarded by some Egyptologists to represent the pinnacle of Egypt's imperial authority. However, as was discussed in the 6th installment of this series, a number of intriguing events transpire after he has stepped down from his position as supreme ruler. For a brief summary, it appears that Thutmose IV passed away before his normal time. As a result of the examination of his mummies, researchers have theorized that he died between the ages of 25 and 28 years old, and there were no signs of illness or trauma at the time of his death. That he was malnourished at the time of his passing is nevertheless a peculiar remark that has been made. In the latter days of his life, Thutmose IV did not appear to be eating well for whatever reason. Due to the absence of any other indications of illness, it is possible that he was experiencing a significant level of stress. This is something that one would anticipate from a pharaoh who had watched the wrath of God being poured out in the destruction of Egypt during the 10 plagues. During the reign of his successor, Amenhotep III, Egypt begins to lose control of its lands in the Levant. This finally leads to the enslavement of Egypt's most important ally, the kingdom of the Mitanni, by the Hittites during the reign of his grandson Akhenaten. His reign represents a significant event in Egyptian history. According to a round reading of 1 Kings 6:1 in the Masoretic, it is highly improbable that Thutmose IV could be considered a contender. There is another fascinating aspect to consider, which is that if Thutmose IV is the pharaoh of the Exodus, then the reign of Amenhotep III is between 37 and 38 years. This is the period of time that Israel wandered in the desert until the first generation of Israelites died away. Deuteronomy 2:14. The references to the Habiru in Canaan emerged during the period of Akhenaten, which would be a good match for Joshua's conquest. This occurs in the aftermath of Amenhotep III's 38 years of power, which occurred during the reign of Akhenaten of Egypt. Because of these factors, I'm of the opinion that there is a compelling argument to be made for Thutmose IV to be the pharaoh of the Exodus. According to chronology, the case of Amenhotep III is the most improbable. Thus, his best option in this regard is to use the Septuagint interpretation as a second alternative. The conditions of his rule, on the other hand, are appealing for the same reasons as they were for Thutmose IV. Egypt is becoming progressively weak during this period, and his son's reign would roughly correspond with the time when Joshua was conquering the land. The fact that these occurrences take place before his death, on the other hand, is a negative aspect of his case. If it were true that the Exodus occurred under his rule, then this would indicate that he did not die while traveling over the sea. On the other hand, allow me to provide a potential solution to this problem. It is important to keep in mind that the untimely passing of Thutmose IV most likely meant that Amenhotep III succeeded to the throne when he was still a kid. In the event that this were to occur, he would only have the title of Pharaoh in a symbolic sense, as Egypt would be governed by intermediaries until he reached an age when he could reign of his own volition. Therefore, it is probable that one of Thutmose IV's viziers served as the acting pharaoh during this period of time. In the event that the Exodus took place during the early years of Amenhotep III, when he was still a child, it is possible that this hypothetical official was the pharaoh of the Exodus. This is just speculation, but if one is going to claim that the reign of Amenhotep III was the period of the Exodus, then I believe that this is the most plausible approach to harmonize it with the historical evidence. Taking into consideration all that we have discussed, I will provide two hypotheses concerning the Pharaoh of the Exodus. The first hypothesis is that the body of the Pharaoh was found, and the second hypothesis is that it was lost during the journey across the sea. In the event that the body of the Pharaoh was found, my choice for the Pharaoh of the Exodus would be Thutmose IV. Egypt is a powerful and stable nation prior to his coming to power. The aftermath of his reign causes Egypt to rapidly deteriorate into a weak and powerless state. Both the record of Amenhotep III's reign and the Amarna letters, which were written during Akhenaten's rule, are in agreement with the biblical account. Furthermore, they provide synchronisms that are not compatible with any other pharaoh that has been presented. In the event that the body of the pharaoh was misplaced, I would propose that the Pharaoh of the Exodus was a governing intermediate during the early years of Amenhotep III's rule. The synchronisms that we see with the end of Thutmose IV's reign are, in my opinion, too powerful to be carried ahead beyond the early years of Amenhotep III. However, this indicates that he would have been a youngster and would have probably not been serving as pharaoh for a considerable amount of time. The conclusion that can be drawn from this chain of events is that another person served as the acting pharaoh, and it was this man who would have been the one to pay the ultimate price during the Exodus. In light of the fact that the latter proposal is based on guesswork, I prefer the former option. On the other hand, I do not think that the latter can be ruled out because there is a potential that the corpse of the pharaoh was lost in the ocean. In order to facilitate the organization of a timeline, I shall consider the Exodus to be the event that led to the demise of Thutmose IV. On the basis of this understanding, we are able to put up a timeline of events that covers the period of time that the Israelites spent in Egypt up until the beginning of the time of the Judges. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more videos.